Good morning. Once again, this is Pastor Jared Nelson at New Life Presbyterian Church. I wanted to continue our series on some books that I would recommend. And for this time in which many of us are caught at home and we're not doing as much in terms of going out and socializing, and many of us have some extra time. And so I'd like us to consider using some of that extra time to do things that are spiritually beneficial, such as reading a good book. Now, of course, the good book that you should read all the time is the Bible, but beyond that, sometimes we want to explore and have a teacher teach us more about the Bible, or explore some other doctrines in depth. Today I want to talk to you about an author that I think a lot of you know about, but that I just want to recommend you picking up one of his books again and exploring some things with him, and that is R.C. Sproul. Many of us know him because he was local for a long time. In fact, he was there at the formation of the Presbytery of the Ascension into the PCA, and helped us keep our name of Ascension Presbytery, because he said it was a underutilized and underrealized doctrine, the Ascension of Christ. Sproul was influential for me first by listening to him. I had read a little here and there on what he had said about free will. Some people really enjoyed his book on freedom of the will. I wasn't ready for it at the time. The thing that really captured me, and that has really stuck with me, was he did a teaching series that was based on a book of his called The Holiness of God. In fact, we have this book in our library right now if you want to check it out, or pick it up online. It's $10 or something. Holiness of God really walk through the fact that we are almost afraid of this doctrine anymore. And as he walks through the holiness of God, what I was struck by was the fact that it's a major theme. It's something that we don't think about a whole lot. And it's something that is very useful to us. That's why I've been hitting on it a little bit more within Exodus, and thinking we need to go through the tabernacle. We need to know what holiness is and why it's so important to have a reverence for God. One of the stories he talked about there was one that I had never read before, even while I was in seminary, because you read Genesis, Exodus, and you go, I'm going to skip Numbers and maybe a little bit in Deuteronomy, and then you pick up in Joshua. Well, that's a terrible way to read through the Bible, because there's some gold nuggets in Leviticus and Numbers. And in Leviticus, there's this story of Nadab and Abihu. Nadab and Abihu worship God in their own way, and they're killed. And he just reflects on the fact that we just really don't like that story. He reflected on the fact that he had materials from his old denomination in the main line that tried to explain away this story. But then he said, as he dived into it, it was really about the holiness of God and something that we have missed. Do we tremble to think that God is just and holy? And if not, if we've never had an awe, been struck by a feeling of awe over the holiness of God, do we really know it? That's what I'd recommend, especially from R.C. Sproul. Now, Sproul is really available in ways that are not just his books. He has a lot of them. Everybody's a Theologian is on my shelf, as well as multiple other books by him. But if you're ever able to, on your smartphone, under podcast, search out Renewing Your Mind. And there's a podcast in which you can still listen to the old teachings of R.C. Sproul. He would do a radio broadcast, and they're just about 20 minutes long. And you got this little nugget of doctrine, and it was so great. And I've talked to so many people who were benefited by that. I talked to a man in his final years of life who had gone to Princeton Seminary, who had learned modernist and approaches to theology. And he said it was useless to him. He didn't understand it. It was all academic. And that really changed when he heard R.C. Sproul. And he picked up a Reformation Study Bible. That's what Sproul worked on. If you have a Reformation Study Bible, he was the editor on that. And started listening to Renewing Your Mind, and realized that God was not a principle to be studied, but a personal God to interact with him. And I thought that was such a great story. And this is unfortunately something he had to realize after going to Princeton Seminary and after living into his 60s And then when he had cancer at the end of his life, that was when he first knew of God as personal. And that was thanks to the work of R.C. Sproul and pointing him there, and the Holy Spirit using that. I really recommend picking this up, because this is probably not a book that you've ever thought, I want to read a book about the holiness of God. That's why you need to. You should pick up this book. You should read it, or go online and listen to his lectures on the holiness of God. Any way that you can, expose yourself to this, a neglected area of our theology, at least in our personal lives. So that's my recommendation this week, is check out R.C. Sproul, especially The Holiness of God, as a book to read during this time in which we're home. Thanks again.